Throughout the years, whatever the game, the Red Army's passion is always the same. Decades pass, now we rise anew. Rovers fans, this pod is for you. We won the cup, we ruled the league. A grand final win made us all believe. The world took note with wristbands fall. The Robins superb, now we won it all. Red Army, let's hear you sing with all your might. For your world champions in the red and white. We are okay, and we are the champions of the world. Yes, we are the champions of the world. This is the Robin Pod.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Robin Pod, which is of course powered by Budget Tires Auto Centre, the only car specialist trusted by the players, club officials and supporters of the world famous Hulkingston Rovers. Joining me on this week's episode is Robin Pod regular GaryLee and Karl Smith, of course, who you'll know from the Robin Pod, but also the two Yorkshire for a Saint podcast. He'll tell us a lot more about that later on. On this week's Robin Pod, of course, we look back at a very, very disappointing defeat to Warrington. We look ahead to the derby on Thursday night. We talk about Mikey Lewis and his discipline and that suspension. Of course, Steve Till joins us for Robins Revisited, and we answer all your questions, and there's lots of them in question time. Gary, let's start with you. It's been a while since you've been on the Robin Pod. Before we talk about the Warrington game on Saturday, what have you made of the Robins' form so far this season?
I'm quite a positive person, I think.
Well, that pause said a lot to me.
And I always take stock, and I think to myself, Challenge Cup final, World Cup Challenge holders this year, 7th, second best points difference in the league if you look at the points difference. So it's not too bad, but that's not reflected in the form, is it? You know, we've had some really poor matches where we just haven't turned up. So from a position and where we are and what we've won and what we've been to, it's all right. But from what we've seen on the telly and standing in the stands, it's not been too good, has it? For some of the games.
I tell you what, Gary, you make a really good point, and this is what we're going to come on to, Karl, because it's not necessarily the fact that the Robins are losing games. But what's really worrying is the manner of defeat, and it's the fact that we roll over and have our bellies tickled too many times. We don't just get beat by the odd 2 points or 4 points, you know, a last-minute drop goal. When we get beat, at the moment, Karl, we get proper beat.
Yeah, it's disappointing compared to the last 2 or 3 previous seasons. We normally defend our line very well and make the opposition team work very, very hard to score points. Now, this season's been the total opposite to what we're used to seeing. Teams are rolling us from one end of the field to the other within 3 or 4 tackles and then scoring straight under the stick. So it tells me there's a lack of trust between the players. And these soft tries are obviously just killing us on a weekly basis at the moment. And also the errors as well. Basic fundamentals of rugby league are killing us. So very inconsistent so far within the season.
Yeah, and we'll come on to the specifics in the game because, Gary, I was excited for this Warrington game. And the reason why is because it's probably one of the strongest lineups we've been able to put out there for the last few weeks. We had players returning. You know, that Wakefield game wasn't pretty. You know, we again, another performance where, like we spoke on the Robin Pod last week, where at half-time you felt comfortable. You were expecting the Robins to kick on. They didn't kick on. It got worse. But going into the Warrington game, you saw players returning who you thought would really make a difference. And unfortunately, they didn't. And that's why a lot of Rovers fans will be scratching their head at how the result came about, because this is a Warrington side as well, Gary. Don't forget who have been early pace setters, got themselves in a really good position. A lot of people watching from the outside would go maybe a false position. And I thought they were there for the taking based on the squad that Warrington had. And I looked at the squad that the Robins put in, and I was expecting a lot more than what was produced on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, it was. When you look at the squad, when it comes out a couple of days before, you think to yourself, you look at the numbers, don't you? That's what I do. I look at the numbers and go, right, that's basically 1 to 17. It's which Willie Peters always picks, doesn't he? Always picks his first 17 if he can, if they're available. And when you look at compared to the Warrington squad, theirs weren't 1 to 17. There was numbers all over the place. But like Karl said, they just seemed to roll us, didn't they? 10, 15 metres each carry up the pitch. And before you know it, on tackle 4, they're on our 20-metre line. And you think to yourself, how have we got ourselves in this position? But yes, I was hoping the game would be the start of our running. The start of our running to 3rd or 4th, potentially, maybe 2nd, but it just faltered, didn't it? No, it didn't falter. It absolutely
got obliterated.
Went down the pan, yes.
I'll tell you what, though, Karl, let's look at that lineup, because you go Arthur Morg, Tom Davis, obviously Reece Martin filling in at centre, Ollie Gildart, Booth on the wing, Mikey Lewis, Tyrone May, Saul Sosu, Jez Litton, Dean Hadley, we then saw Carl Lawton, James Batchelor in the second row, Elliot Minchella loose forward, Tom Amone on the bench, Sam Luckley on the bench, Jordan Desiree on the bench, Jack Broadbent on the bench. Hang on. That's not a weakened side, is it? There's probably a couple of players playing out of position, a couple of players filling in. But that's probably the strongest we've been for a good few weeks now. And I think that's why, and we'll come on to frustration and what people felt about that result later on, Karl. But on the face of it, that's a very, very strong Rovers side.
Yeah, and what you got to take into consideration as well, Warrington was probably weaker than us in terms of their 17. So I think that's why it's so disappointing. But like you say, barring Petter Hicko and Broadbent on the bench, I mean, you're not far off full strength, as Gary touched on earlier. So it was disappointing, wasn't it? And you'd expected a lot more. I mean, me and you stood on the terraces on Saturday, and I said to you, as soon as you got into the ground, like, I'm not sure what to expect here. It's never, oh yeah, we're going to win 100% or we're going to get battered 100%. It was sort of, Warrington have got a few missing, we're a bit scratchy there. They've lost a few recently, so it was all up in the air. And I certainly didn't see the result, panning out as it did in the end.
Yeah, and Gary, what I really enjoyed about the Robins last season is it was almost like if we suffered an injury or a player was missing through suspension, the next player just stepped up. It was almost seamless. Like the game plan was what it is. It was set, and whoever plays in them positions know what they're doing. And like you said, Gary, before, we just seem so disjointed. We don't seem to know what the game plan is. And ultimately, when we look at some of the penalties, some of the things that are happening on the pitch, it's because, for me, we don't seem to have that game plan. The players who are out on the field, don't get me wrong, feel collectively united as a team, but they don't seem to be executing a game plan. And what worries me is that Willie Peters has alluded to that. He says, look, I can coach the players, I can tell them what to do, but I can't coach them desire, I can't coach them effort, I can't coach them wanting to do it. That's the worrying thing for me, Gary, because the game plan's obviously set out, but for whatever reason at the moment, and this is why we're all scratching our heads, is we don't know why they're not executing that game plan.
Yeah, I've wrote down here, because I do prepare for these podcasts.
Really? If you're in the comment section and you want to feedback on Gary's research and analysis, please do.
Just a few. I've written down here that there seems to be, from an outsider looking in, from a fan on the terraces and watching on the telly, I don't know if we're trying too hard to recapture that form and feeling, perhaps. It's a two-way street. I think the senior management team talk about it all the time, don't they? About that triangle between the players, the fans, and everything else that goes on. And I think the fans and the players feed off each other. And I think the players, to me, they look like them. And I'm not an expert, but I think they look like sometimes they're trying too hard, and that final pass doesn't quite go, and they kind of push the offload, or they push that when they could just go and do something different. And there seems to be a lack of joy on the pitch. Now that's different from a lack of effort. I'm definitely not saying there's no effort there. There just seems to be no joy in what they're doing anymore, and I don't know what it is. And I've put here positives are few and far between, unfortunately, because I'm, like I said, I try to look for the good stuff. But yeah, and I don't know what it is. There's always rumours flying around, isn't there? And we won't touch on them because we don't want to add to the rumour mill. But yeah, for me, I think I don't know. I can't put my finger on it either. So I'm the same as Willie Peters there. I just can't put my finger on what the actual problem is.
The only problem is, Gary, with that, and Karl, I'll bring you in because you're right, mate. Me, you, Karl, can't do anything about it. But we're not the head coach of Hull Kingston Rovers. And at the moment, there seems to be something that's not quite clicking. And it's always a worrying sight for me, Karl, when you see Willie Peters on the touchline, because very rarely is he there when we're doing well. He's always there when it's desperate. You know, he said before, didn't he? I think it was, I can't remember which game, he wanted to be near the touchline because he wanted to sense how the players were feeling and what there was talking. And like I said, every time I see him on the touchline, I know we're in desperation mode because he's trying to kickstart something. It's not clicking for whatever reason. We're trying to work out why. But it's a fair point what Gary makes, I think, Karl, about how the players seem to be forcing things and not trusting the plan. So whatever the plan is, the players seem to be, I don't know, trying to stick to it. And then we've seen players just doing rash passes, knocking on, kicks that are going up, like just things that are so uncharacteristic over the past, 14 months. And I feel like we're almost now desperate. We feel like we're playing desperate rugby, trying to chase that league position down, trying to chase the playoff position down, the playoff semi-final, trying to chase the grand final down. And we've seemed to be quite settled before, and now we're seeing quite erratic. And that's why it's very uncharacteristic for this Rovers side at the moment.
Yeah, it's a good point that you make, and one of the main things for me that stands out, Chris, is the fact that I see players trying to take shortcuts on the field. I don't see us trying to build some field position, and all this starts from basic rugby league. You get to your fifth tackle, you kick the ball, you get up to the right end of the field, and then you build your attack off the back of that the last set in defence. So players are trying to take shortcuts, by throwing a long ball out wide and it ends up in touch. Throwing the ball forward and he ends up getting called a forward pass or throwing a cut-out pass and somebody knocks on. So I can't help but think that the players are going through the process correctly and starting with the basic fundamentals. And then when they're getting into the areas of the field, they're forcing things, and that's creating errors. And that whether that's down to finesse, or they just think they can turn up and turn it on when they want because they've been so successful recently. I'm not so sure, but I think it's just a case of getting back to basics and building your game, from one end of the field to the other, and then being connected in your defence as well, which we haven't seen for a number of weeks now. So I just think it's shortcuts. I really do. Yeah,
and I tell you what, Gary, what typified that Rose performance for me, and it was in the opening, couple of minutes, 3 minutes. The amount of time we got ourselves in good position. Don't forget against Warrington, we did get ourselves in good field possession. We had some great opportunities. Opening, 2 minutes, Mikey Lewis does a 40-20.
A 32, as it was, wasn't it? Yeah, I know. It was a great kick, wasn't it?
Great kick. And then what do we do? Okay, getting out of an advantageous position. An absolutely terrible pass from Tyrone May. Mikey Lewis knocks on. And then opening, 2-3 minutes, for me, set the tone for the rest of the game. Because, like I said, we did get ourselves in some good field position. We did do some good things. And every time we seem to do something good, we just turned it round. Gave Warrington easy ball. And Warrington must have been licking their lips when they saw that performance, because we give them some easy scores. And do you know what? Sometimes it's not about the opposition winning the game. It's about us losing it. And I don't know what the phrase, but we lost that game. We lost it because of our own errors. Don't get me wrong, Warrington won it. You have to give a bit of credit to Wire, because they did play well. But by hell, did we not give them opportunity to play well by putting them in real good position?
Yeah, we gave them a few from out. We gave the ball away a few times to them in good positions, didn't we? When those of us that have been watching Rovers, for the last 3 or 4 years, you always stand there and you sit there and think to yourself, do you know what? If we go a couple of tries down, it's not a problem, because we've got the players to kind of come back, But now I'm sat there thinking, Christ, man, that's 12-0. We're not going to come back from this, and that's that. Yeah, for me, that is. It just makes me feel sad that we haven't done that really since the World Cup Challenge, have we? We haven't put that performance in. We haven't put a performance where we can say that was absolutely fantastic. That's the Rovers from last season and the season before, really, or the season before.
Well, I think, to be fair, if you look back, there was a St Helens game, weren't they, at home? Depleted St Helens. There was to be fair, the Challenge Cup semi-final against Warrington, where they turned up. But Karl, I'll tell you what, there's when we start off badly, like Gary said, we're done. Like, there's no coming back from it, is there? And it's becoming a feature too often where, we saw it with a couple of times, haven't we, where it's like so-and-so's knocking on from the kicks, and just really uncharacteristic, mistakes. And there's no doubt whatsoever these players are hungry for it. They want it. But this is what someone in the stands can't understand. They train all week. They go through the captain's run. They're probably brilliant. And then how do you make these errors, these knock-ons, these bad passes so early on in a game? And now I think a lot of sides, when they face us, Karl, they've got no fear. Like, I think we made teams fear playing us last year. I think this season, they think they can get us. And once they know that they get 6, 8, 10 points on the board, like Gary said, it's very, very difficult for us to turn it around.
Yeah, and I think a big factor in terms of that is we're like the hunted now, aren't we? We can keep saying about what we did last season, and it was amazing, it was great, and it was probably the best time one of the times in our club history. But now everybody else wants to sock it to us. Where we've been at the top of that perch, and everybody's trying that extra 20% to knock us off. And like you guys alluded to, soon as even more so in the last month or so, soon as a team gets a couple of scores ahead of us, the old Rovers would have pulled that back. There just doesn't seem to be that resilience and that confidence within the group to sort of hang on in games and then nick the result at the end like we've done in previous seasons. So yeah, there's certainly something not aligned with the Rovers way. Now, whether that's the fact that Willie Peters has announced earlier on in the season that he was leaving, I'm not so sure. And like Gary said, there was numerous rumours going around in camp and all the rest of it. But ultimately, how do you prepare for individuals to make the individual mistakes they do? Time and time again in a game, it's so difficult, and you're just never giving yourself a chance in that game on Saturday, did we? So it's frustrating, isn't it? But hopefully we can move forward now, knowing we're playing the Derby game on Thursday. Yeah,
well, hopefully, Karl. Hopefully, I'm glad I'm recording this Robin pod now rather than after the game on Saturday, because and we'll come on to fans' reaction and supporters' reaction after that. But Gary, fundamentally, Warrington made nearly double the amount of meters we made, and we had 42 missed tackles, and they had 12. Well, stats don't lie, do they? Stats are sometimes a bit of an enigma, but them stats don't lie. They got the roll on us, and they fundamentally didn't miss, as many tackles as we did. And let's be honest, Gary, if you look at our missed tackle count, very, very regularly are we missing 40 plus tackles a game, which, like Karl said, wasn't a feature last season. And for whatever reason, now this is where people are looking to maybe the assistant coaches, the loss of Danny Ward, the introduction of Ian Watson, Luke Gale, etc. I don't know, but I can understand as a fan podcast why people may, put 2 and 2 together and come up with 4.5 almost.
What have you got the stats? Have you got the stats there for how many, the difference between the tackle count, how many tackles we had to make, and how many tackles Warrington had to make?
Well, I tell you what, I can't, but I can reel off some of the tackle counts for our players. We had Jez Litton 42, Dean Hadley 30, James Batchelor 47, Elliot Minchella 34. I tell you what, no Warrington player, I don't think nearly got close to that. So
42 tackles is 7 full sets, isn't it?
It's a hell of a lot of work. And don't forget the missed tackles as well, what they made. Yeah. So, the James Batchelor 47, Carl Lawton 29 tackles, Tom Amon prop 30 tackles.
As a sub as well, he came on.
Hell of a lot of work that they're getting through.
I think I said on one of the no, yeah, I definitely did. I don't know. I think teams have figured us out this year, and I think maybe we're at the same level, and teams. I've got two hands here, and teams have come up and are surpassing our level from last year, and they've figured us out. I don't know. This is a question I asked anybody who wanted to listen to me ask it. Do we think we're too nice? The arrogance has gone. We're not taking it to the opposition anymore. Are we just? We never seem to, apart from the odd player, Mikey at the weekend, we never seem to get too flustered, do we? We never seem to get too engrossed in anything that goes on. Are we still that? Has our arrogance gone? We don't. I don't know. It's a question. I think I'm not sure. I'm doing your job.
I think it's a fair point, isn't it, Karl? I think what we pride ourselves on is beating teams through effort and endeavour and energy. They're the things that the practice. They're the things you can work on. Aggression, controlled aggression. I think we've been very good at showing that. Like I said on previous Robin pods, Wara Hargreaves and Mickey McAlorum, they are always been almost made to be like the holy grail of players. Like, don't get me wrong, they did have a big impact last season, but look at the performances and the amount of games that they played. That said, off the field, a lot of people, Karl, are looking to the leadership of the side at the moment. And for me, one player who's really seems to have struggled this season is Elliot Minchella. He just doesn't seem to be the player that we saw last season. And he talks about at the start of the season about how he needs to do less minutes, but be more effective in the minutes that he's on the field. Well, he got hooked on the 29th minute against Warrington, and he came back on in the 54th. So that's 15 minutes. Add on the half time. So you can see where he's been spelt. But I don't know. Maybe we expect so much of our captain sometimes, because he's an easy target. Through my eyes, is he as effective as what he was last season? I don't think so. That's a collective thing as well, though, because I think the whole team are not as effective as what there was. But we do look very disjointed at times, and there don't seem to be that spark. There don't seem to be that person who's grabbing them by the scruff of the neck, which is sometimes I'd say, Karl, is a bit of a lazy observation, because you don't need a cheerleader. You don't need a cheerleader out there banging the drum, but you do need someone sometimes to spark the team into something. And for me, Karl, too many occasions we seem to have not had that in games.
Yeah, and also what you've got to try and account for is that, like you alluded to a second ago, that Willie Peters has asked Minchella to change his game slightly, so he wants quality over quantity. Now, you're going from a guy who normally plays 80 minutes every week, and he's there, and he's the third man in the tackle, and he's organising the line, he's there in the backfield when his defence are getting sorted. So I know what you're saying about the cheerleader effect, but you do need a captain and leader on the field more often than not, don't you? So we know when he comes off, he's been hooked off normally because he's having poor performance. But does Willie Peters need to take a bit of accountability for, Minchella's role changing? Is he asking Minchella to do things that he's not capable of doing or, capable of doing for long periods of time? I'm not so sure, but it's clear to see that he's underperforming, compared to previous seasons. And I think Minchella's strongest game is being out there organising. You look across the competition and I wouldn't put him up there as the top 13 in the competition, and that's all due respect. He's a captain, he's a leader. He'll do the things people don't see. He'll do the awkward and horrible things what other people don't want to do. But that's just his game, and I think you've got to try and stick to his positives rather than changing what he does and asking him to do something that probably not in his locker. So I think Willie Peters also has to take a bit of accountability for that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and there was lots of people pointing fingers at Willie Peters after the game on Saturday, and
I didn't see any of that. Where was that?
Well, I think a lot of people, and this is in the concourse, and this is on the coaches coming home, and I think, hey, look, this is raw emotion, and this is why, like I said,
agree.
I'm pleased that I recorded this now rather than after Saturday, and this is where you've got to take things into account. You've got to reflect on things. I think a lot of people, Gary, have alluded to the fact that once Willie Peters announced that he was leaving the Robins, that it's very hard for a head coach to then sometimes get that extra 10% out of players because they know it's almost like, hang on, you're going. Whereas last season, every player, every coach, every supporter, every member of off-field staff was heading in the same direction. No one's leaving. No one's going anywhere. It is all to do with the silverware, getting them trophies. That is what it is. This season, though, Willie Peters is leaving. We know that. He's leaving. So that's why I think people, supporters, quite rightly, have said, hang on, as soon as that happened, maybe things have changed in the club. Mentally, maybe people are just not, I don't know, in tune anymore.
Well, I think any team, whether it's a sports team or a team at work, if you've had a great year the year before and all of a sudden the leader of that team says they're now going to another company or another team, you're gonna wait for the new guy, aren't you, or the new person? And it's just a natural human. I think it's just a natural human emotion or feeling or reaction is to think, well, we did it. We had a fantastic season last season, didn't we? The big guy's going now. The big boss is going now. Yeah, we'll just wait for the new guy to come in and see what he wants to do. Yes, I agreed. I think things have changed since Willie Peters said he was going to leave, and it doesn't happen, does it, where somebody says I'm leaving at the end of the season. Usually the top person, when they want to leave, they go. If it's in a company or football or another sport, there are not many places have that year transition period, really. And a lot of people I saw and saw some of the comments, people saying, maybe he should go now, or maybe he should have gone at the beginning of the season and get the new guy in, get our new coach in as soon as he can. But yes, I think it's just natural for there to be ripples throughout a team when the leader's leaving.
Yeah, and also it's more so, Karl, as well, when the results are going not the way that we want them to go. And sport's very fickle, isn't it? Rugby league's very fickle. Every sport's very fickle. So I can understand why people. I think Willie Peters, he's here to see the job out. I still got true faith. I've still got faith that we are going to get to Old Trafford, but there's going to have to be whether it's Willie Peters, whether it's the players, there's going to have to be something that happens seismic, which actually brings them all together. And I said it on the Robin pod last week. Ultimately, we are going to have to win at least 5 or 6 games in a row now to get us to Old Trafford. And each game we lose, that gets harder and harder to do. So look, we've got a game on Thursday night against that lot, which for me is something that I'm relishing really, because I think I'd rather play them than anybody else at the moment. Just sticking with the Warrington game though, Carl, looking at some players' form, what's happened to Tyrone May? He seemed to have been absolutely red hot, put himself into contention for Man of Steel in the early round of voting. And is it as simple as that actually now oppositions have learned just to stand off him and let him, he seems to be so ineffective at the moment. And do you think it's because defences are standing off him and letting him just play, and his players are actually not coming to anything because he hasn't really got any room to play. He hasn't got the unpredictability because oppositions have worked out how to stop him.
Yeah, he's been decent for majority of the season. It's just, like I say, the actual position he plays, I think people are getting wise to him a little bit, but I also think when you're playing in a struggling side, it's getting the ball to him early enough. It's all right just giving him the ball and saying, right, do something magic, because we know Tyrone May, don't we? He's rather rocks or diamonds. And unfortunately, the last 3 weeks, it's been rocks. Previous to that, it was the diamonds. But you can't, it's difficult. You can't just you can't pin it all on one man if you're not getting up the field and your forwards aren't getting you into good position for your halves to, put good kicks and good last tackle plays in. It's always going to be a struggle. So, my thoughts on Tyrone May, because he's probably one of my favourite players and has been for a couple of seasons now for Rovers. But I just think you're only as good as your pack, aren't you? And that's not, taking the thingy off him. It's just the reality of the situation. It's like in football, if you don't get the ball in the opposition half, you're never going to get a shot off higher. So it's, what I'm trying to say is it's not just down to Tyrone May.
No, and this is always the thing. And this is what God, I ends up having a row with someone in this. It's okay. You can be critical of people, players, exactly. and without it meaning that you're not the most. You're still so some woman's ranting at me. Oh well, you haven't seen them during the shit times. No, you have seen them during. Still, don't mean I can't have opinion on the Rovers team of 2026. And there seems to be. I don't know what your opinion is, Gary, but there seems to be a thing about. I don't know. People almost wearing badges on the chest to go, well, I've been watching them for so long, so I'm the only one who can have an opinion. Or if someone else has an opinion, well, how long have you been watching them for? Well, we'll still be watching them when it's like, whoa, you can still have a reasoned debate and a reasoned opinion on what's going on without having to have been watching them from the 1940s kind of thing.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? You said there, reasoned opinion. What I don't like is, the players know they've not had a good game, or they've not performed or whatever, and I don't think, for me personally, people can, and you see it on the various forums, don't you, and things like that. You see everybody just pile in. For me, and this is just me. Yeah, I totally appreciate, you could have been watching, you could have been to just one game, or you could have been there against Blackpool Borough in 1979. It doesn't really matter to me how long you've been going. You're a fan, you're allowed an opinion, but I don't like the piling in afterwards. The players know they've not performed very well. They don't need me to say you were crap. I know that they know. So that's why I always try and not all that it does. I don't succeed all the time, but I always try and either stay away from it or just look at the positives if I can, because the players don't need it. And that's just my opinion. Yeah, I get you're going to be walking out the ground and somebody's going to go, what are you saying that for? You can't say that because you weren't there in 19 blob, but you're still entitled to your opinion, providing it's informed and reasonable, and not abusive. You can say what you want, but I don't like to pile on afterwards. Sorry. Yeah.
No, but it's right. And also, do you know what, Gary? Normally the pile-on's reserved to social media, and we'll come on to that, and particularly about Mikey Lewis when we discuss him and his omission from the game against that lot on Thursday night. But I tell you what, like I said, normally it's reserved for social media. Well, I saw people going full in the face of Sam Luckley, Jez Litton, giving them absolute pelters. At the same time, when the beauty of kids is they don't see the magnitude of the result sometimes. They're just there to enjoy the game and they don't care what the score is. And you've got families trying, get pictures with the kids with the players and stuff like that. And you've got blokes going, shouting in people's faces to the point where Sam Luckley's walking off the pitch, like shaking his head going, nah, that's me, I'm done. And it's, hey, look, whatever we think about this Robin side and their and the results, it's not through any sheer lack of effort or determination or desire. They are absolutely desperate to get them wins. So that's where you've got to be measured. And to see people bag some of our heroes, just sad, Karl. And I was stood with you. We saw it. It's just so not needed, and it's just so frustrating because, I will say these boys still do have a little bit of credit in the bank. It's probably more than a little bit, but they've took us to heights that we've never seen before. They've done things for us that we would never have ever dreamt of. So come on, and that's what frustrates me about it sometimes, Karl. You can have a reasoned debate, you can have an opinion, but bloody hell, players don't deserve to be shouted at and sworn at and abused. When they're coming over to us to have the pictures taken with the kids and stuff, that for me was too far.
Yeah, even more so with Sam Luckley, because every single game at the end he goes over, regardless if they've won.
He fronted up. That's what frustrated me.
He's one of the few from that leadership group which will front up, and he does it time and time again. I mean, we've stayed at the end of games before, and my little one's been the last one waiting for Sam, and he's literally gone and had a photo with every single person or kid waiting. So for anybody to throw pelters at any players, never mind Sam Luckley, is absolutely disgusting. And obviously we don't condone that. We pay our money to go there and have an opinion, but when you cross that line, you've crossed the line and you bang out of order. So there's just no need for it, is there? I mean, what the players have done in especially last season, it's been nothing short of miraculous. So they've got that credit in the bank, and you just get the odd idiot, don't you? And let's be honest, fellas. Every club of every sport has them, the minority few, don't they? Who think they've got they own the world, they own the rights to say what they like just because they've paid to get in to watch the game. But it's clearly not the case, and obviously we don't condone that. And it is to a minimum, isn't it? And we don't see that very often, luckily.
No, and to be fair, the vast majority of the support at Warrington, 99%, was absolutely brilliant. Great numbers. It's just, yeah. And I think that's what it comes back to about being constructive, and you can have an opinion, but it's how you put it across, which is the main thing. Look, I'm trying to wrap up this Warrington game. Every time I put my notes, something else would please say. I don't want to talk about it anymore, but I feel like
you've got to do it. You've got to talk about the elephant in the room. Go on.
I think Reece Martin didn't cover himself in glory, did he? I don't. And to be fair, if it wasn't for Noah Booth's HIA, I dare say he'd have been back out on the pitch, because I think he absolutely stunk the place out in that centre role. He's not a centre though, is he? No. And this is what frustrates me sometimes with Willie Peters is, yes, certain players are versatile, but they're not that. Reece Martin is an out-and-out second rower, and that is his position. He is not a centre, and he showed that against Warrington for me. Maybe that's why we had Broadbent on the bench to try and negate that. But yeah, the fact that
the thing is as well, Chris, he's not the most mobile of second rowers, so putting him in the centre, it's just negative, and it's just a negative change. I know he's probably put him there thinking, right, he's an experienced man, he'll do a job there, but when you're carrying Broadbent on the bench, it's just a no-brainer for me. And we can never question Willie Peters' his decisions, because 99.9% of the time he gets them decisions right. But I think if you ask him now and have his time over, he'd admit he'd got it wrong in terms of that position. So sometimes it happens, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, that was a result that put us into 7th in the table in Super League, which is outside of the playoffs. Of course, there's lots of rugby league left to play. But before we discuss what's coming, and of course, answer all your questions during question time, I look forward to the derby. Here's Steve Till with Robins Revisited.
Hi Chris, going back 8 years this week, 8 years to when we played that lot, July the 27th, 8 years ago, 2018. And it was a Rovers team that had just signed 2 ex-Hull players. In fact, we'd signed them from Leigh, they were on loan from Leigh. And they were Craig Hall and Ben Crooks, and they were to play a pivotal role in the match. In fact, Rovers' team was Quinlan, Hall, Crooks, Salter, Oakes, Blair, Atkin, Jewett, Cater, Mulhern, Tickle, Clarkson and Kavanagh. So that was the team that was sent out to play the Black and Whites with Scruton, Donaldson, Wardle and Carney also on board on the bench. So that was Tim Sheen's outfit. And we're facing a whole team that had Farimo, Griffin, Tumavavi, Abdul, Sneed, Scott Taylor and Houghton. Fairly tough-looking whole team, but this whole team had been mullered the week before by Wakefield. They'd been beaten 72-10 by Wakefield and had all but given up hopes of finishing high in the top 6, which they'd hoped for. Just before the game, the heavens opened. It was a torrential downpour that greeted the teams as they came out. And it was expected after that 72-10 debacle that Lee Radford's side would respond. But it was Rovers, bolstered by Ben Crooks and Craig Hall. And incidentally, the first time Tim Sheens had met Ben Crooks was when they were getting on the bus at the Village Hotel after having a pre-match meal. That was the first time he'd met Ben Crooks. So Crooksy had never had a training session with Rovers. And in fact, Craig Hall had only attended the previous day's training session, didn't take part. So that wing partnership, although they were together at Leigh, didn't know a lot of the Rovers playbook. Anyway, as I say, torrential rain, horrible conditions, but it was Rovers that took the initiative early on, and a chase from Crooks forced a dropout, which Rovers punished with a try when Bobby Blair released Craig Hall out wide to score. And the duel were again involved for the second, finished after an 80-minute hack and chase. I can remember that well. Both Crooks and Hall, I think it was Crooks that kicked the ball and Hall chased it, and Rovers touched down after 80 metres. Tickle scored a try, another ex-Hull player. Tickle scored a try as the halter went, and it looked to have put Rovers in a good position. In fact, all the Rovers scoring was done by Hall and Tickle. Put Rovers in a good position, but Hull launched a comeback. Jordan Abdul pounced, then Josh Griffin got a spilled high kick before Mark Minicello wriggled out of a tackle to score, and a second Mark Sneed goal brought both teams level. So it looked as though we were troubled. Incidentally, earlier on in the game, those Rovers fans will remember Bobby Blair getting sin-binned. Referee Gareth Yeo said something to you, and the yellow card came out and Bobby Blair got sin-binned. And if you remember, he made some kind of gesticulation to the crowd. It was a dramatic moment and very unusual for Blair to do that. Anyway, Hull were chasing a win. It was 16-16, but Hull, in their own inimitable style, a bit of indiscipline came in. They handed the momentum back to Rovers, and Danny Tickle was given two penalty chances, which he duly converted, and that gave Tim Sheens his first derby victory as a Rovers coach. Rovers won 20 points to 16. 18,000 fans there at what was the KC then, and a good win for Rovers, and it stood them well because Rovers were going into that middle eight, which they duly won eventually, but that was kicked off by Rovers beating Hull 2016, 8 years ago this week.
Huge thanks to Steve Till for them memories, and of course, who cannot forget Maurice Blair's salute to the Karl. For anyone listening on the podcast, they will not have seen it, but they will know exactly what Karl was doing just then. Funny enough, talking about Reece Martin, player at centre, Maurice Blair, another second rower who featured regularly at centre. I'll tell you what, we've got the derby up next, another one. I'd say I'm getting sick of them, but actually I'm not, because it's the 2 points that we've become accustomed to collecting. Let's talk about the players who definitely won't be featuring in that game on Thursday night. Of course, we know Noah Booth, he suffered a HIA against Warrington, so he definitely will be missing. And Gary, another player who will not be playing, is Mikey Lewis, because, of course, he's copped a 4-game ban. He did an off-the-ball tackle. He also did a headbutt, and there was accusations about Mikey Lewis doing something similar at Magic Weekend with his alleged good friend Davy Litton. Mikey Lewis, Gary, he just seems to have, I don't know, in my opinion, lost his cool and composure, and he doesn't seem to be the player. Albeit, I do think he was very effective against Warrington. He looked like to be a strike player. He looked to be one player who could actually break the line and make something happen. On the flip side, he seems to be putting himself in some very dangerous positions, and ultimately, that's why I think he's copped the ban that he has.
When he's good, he's the best running six in the competition, isn't he? You know, remember, he's a running six. He's kicking games. Come on, as we saw on Saturday, leaps and bounds. His temperament seemed to have, I hate to use the word matured, but he seems to have matured, doesn't he? Compared to the guy we were all seeing 2 or 3 seasons ago. But when he's, I think I'm going to say, when he's trying too hard, it seems to go over the limit, doesn't it? And that's where, and I think it's not. Yeah, for me, I think it's trying too hard, and he was trying to get that kind of. You could see when he during the headbutt tackle, it was a great tackle. He brought him down, and it was just that little bit extra, wasn't it? His temperament got the better of him. But the late tackle, I think he was. I'm going to put it down to, for me, I'm going to put it down to frustration with a game, probably. But you can't be doing that. Play the way you play your good attributes, Mikey, and you'll get all the plaudits again, because you're unstoppable when you're on form. And maybe he should be. Maybe that's what he should be playing for. Yeah, that's my view anyway.
Well, I was going to say, like, I get all the thing of trying so hard, you know, trying to make things happen. You know, he's aggressive. He wants to be on the front foot. He wants to play hard rugby league, fast rugby league. And then that off the ball tackle, that, you know, I think he was looking at, it was about 14, 15 seconds after, you know, it's just, and that they're the ones where you go, where's that come from? And ultimately, he celebrated his birthday at Magic Weekend, Karl, Mikey Lewis. What is he, 25 years old now? And I think we said on the Robin pod last week, he's not a kid anymore. He is, don't get me wrong, like us oldies on here, 25 years old, we'd all love to be there back again. But in terms of professional sport, elite sport, 25, you're not young anymore. You're not learning. You've got to be there. And we'll talk about some of the abuse and online and just the what goes on, which is totally unwarranted. But you can't deny the fact that he has come up with some silly plays over the last few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's professional sport, isn't it? I mean, he's probably spent the last 2 or 3 years everybody blowing smoke up his own ass, and rightly so, because he's been the standout 6 in the competition for a couple of years now, like I've just said. This conversation is never going to be a positive one, so people can make defences for him. They can, because he's the favourite player. You can defend him as much as you want, but in my eyes, you can't defend what he did at weekend. Yeah, he's 25. He's not a young player. He's just got that in his game, and I just don't think you're ever going to get it out. He might go 6 to 9 months without doing anything, and it might be okay. But all it takes is that one brain fart, that one explosion, that one spitting the dummy out, if you like. And whichever way you butter it up, you're never going to put a positive light on it. My only prayer and hope now is that he's going to be out for 4 weeks. He's cost himself 4 weeks of game time. He's cost him, the club 4 weeks of the best number 6 and possibly in the competition missing. And there's a good chance Brian McDermott's watching that and thinking, do I take him to the World Cup? Is he a liability? Can I trust him? So he's bringing a lot of the negative stuff on himself by his actions. And he needs to mature and really learn from this, because if he doesn't, it doesn't matter how much talent you've got in the world. You'll come up with these moments like he does, and that'll just totally override his talent. So as much as we all love him and we tell him how great he is, maybe every now and again somebody just needs to give him a kick up the ass and tell him you can't be doing that.
There's not the. I mean, we spoke earlier on just before Steve's section, didn't we, about Rovers having credit in the bank for the 4 wins, for the 4 trophies and stuff like that, and the outstanding season. And I totally get what you're saying, Karl, about it's not acceptable. He's got a bit of credit in the bank, hasn't he? 16 tries, 14 assists this year.
Gary, I get what you're saying, mate, but that's irrelevant. That's last year. It's discipline issues. It's not. He's going to score tries. He's going to assist tries. He's one of the best 6s in the competition, like I've said. But you cannot excuse that. It doesn't matter if he wears the red and white of Hull KR or the black and white crap of them across the river. It doesn't matter, mate. You can't behave like that. End of story. He's a paid professional. I know. Yeah. He's a paid professional. So whatever you say, you can't defend it, and you're never going to put a positive spin on it. The only thing he can do now is make it right and not let anything like that happen again. And then people will obviously forgive him after certain times passed us by. But I get what you're saying, mate. But in my eyes and my opinion, like, we're all entitled, so you can't defend that. You can't defend it, mate. Honest.
I think when you look at it, I think ultimately, when we've been looking at team selections, and we've been, because one of the things, Gary, what's been levelled at Willie Peters is that there haven't been actually that much squad rotation. So there's a big squad. There's a big squad of players. Obviously, we've brought in a number of players who were probably just below the first team, and many people are suggesting, and we'll come on to them in question time, it's coming home to roost now where Willie Peters hasn't rotated the squad enough. Now, I dare say the fact that Willie Peters' hand's now been forced in terms of he's got to make a change, maybe a change that he wouldn't have made anyway, but there's no doubting when you look at some of the performances, the recent performances, particularly the Warrington and Wakefield game, something needs to change, because it's, like against Warrington, we were probably the strongest we've been for a long time. So the players on show are not reacting to what Willie Peters is doing. Does this force his hand? Now, the big question is, where does it force his hand, and who comes in to replace Mikey Lewis? Is that the spark? Is that the spark that might reignite this side and get something going? Because there's a few options there, aren't there, in terms of replacing him. Ryan Hampshire, of course, we've seen him feature at fullback.
Yeah.
Jez Litton, who we saw absolutely put them lot to the sword last season when he went into that role there. Or the left field one is Jack Charles. But if you look at the salary cap and they're actually into place for Jack Charles, if you look at the live salary cap as it is, we can't afford to put Jack Charles in the team right now, which is a crazy situation. So for Gary, if you're looking at it, are you going Ryan Hampshire, Jez Litton, or do you see anybody else playing there?
Yeah, I'd love to see Jack Charles there. I think a message, possibly a message, needs to be sent. But there's the 21-man squad here. I've got it in front of me. There's no real shakes there, is there? It's the same. It's the same numbers we're always seeing, which is always going to play. But when does it get to the point where he says, "You're not performing. I'm going to bring in these players that I've brought. I'm going to give Ryan another go and Jack Charles a go, and I'm going to start Bill Leyland. Jez go to 6, and we'll get Bill Leyland in at 9." That's probably what I would do, because both of those players are really good on their day, aren't they? They both offer something different, and I'm sure you could interchange them around as well. But yes, that's what I would do. That's what I'd like to see. Yeah.
To be fair, Karl, I think that's what. If I echo a lot of Rovers fans that I spoke to on Saturday, is that a lot of players, even though the results this season haven't been great, a lot of players have still pretty much maintained their place in the side, regardless of form. Joe Burgess is probably the only one recently who's then not been selected based on form. Don't get me wrong, looking at the side, you'd expect him to go back into it, wouldn't you? Bearing in mind that Noah Booth suffered that HIA. We know he's not going to play. There's not really anybody else there. Broadbent, maybe. For me, Broadbent could be the fall guy and doesn't even feature in the squad whatsoever when you look at potentially the players who could be lining up. But you can't deny it. There is a lot of Hull KR supporters who are asking for changes to be made in the side. And I don't mean just changes in that real first team squad, but I mean the Tom Whitehead's coming in, players like that. People saying Declan Murphy, all these names, Jack Charles, all these names, people are asking, well, why aren't they coming in? Because we're not doing great. Bill Leyland, he's one who's really causing a lot of division amongst supporters, isn't he? About in terms of whether he comes into the side. So
you've named 2 players there, haven't you? In that part you've just been talking about there, Johno. You've named 2 players there, Jack Broadbent and Bill Leyland. Mate, they haven't put a foot wrong, have they? Whenever they're on the pitch, they never put a foot wrong.
Yeah, so we look at the derby there, Karl, and you go, do you expect Hickle to come straight back in?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's straight back in. So then you go, well, Arsamorg, unless he's injured, he won't be dropped. So you got Arsamorg, Tom Davis, Pet Hickle, Ollie Gildart. Gildart partnered Noah Booth, HIA. So you're expecting Joe Burgess to come in. And then, like we said, we got Mikey Lewis vacant, Ryan Hampshire, Litton. If you play Litton there, Karl, it's an easy one, isn't it? Karl Lawton and Bill Leyland. Just spell them two.
Gary's right, mate. I'm fairly sure they'll go with Jez in the halves and maybe start Leyland and rotate with what's his face, Karl Lawton. It's one of those, isn't it? Like he was on about, people crying out for wholesale changes and do this, do that. But let's be honest, he does that. He does that in a derby or whatever in the next few weeks, and you lose a game. Oh well, we've got beat anyway. So you can't win from a coach's perspective, can you? It's like you get all these so-called coaches on social media, do this, do that. Ultimately, the only person decision that matters is Willie Peters, and I think he'll stick to what he normally does. He'll try and move people around as little as possible, and I think it'll be like you said, Litton in the halves. He'll probably give Leyland a stint, but there's options there, isn't there? And ultimately, that's why we have squads, isn't it, to give us them options moving forward. But luckily for us, and this is no disrespect, we're playing second bottom of the league, aren't we? So I'm pretty sure whatever he goes with will will give us a good opportunity to get the 2 points on Thursday night. So fingers crossed that can happen.
Yeah, and I mean, don't forget as well, in that Warrington game, Salso, fresh from signing that 1 year contract extension, he didn't play many minutes against Warrington. He'd already suffered injury previously, and then he came in. Obviously, he played that game. He played at Magic. Played against Wakefield. Jai Whitbread. I mean, probably a little bit unfortunate to get dropped again. You know, don't forget this is the second time now he's dropped out he's dropped out the side. He could come back in there for Sue. You'd expect then Hadley to be. Well, this is where then you go, well, does Hadley start prop? I think the second rows are nailed on in terms of Martin and Batchelor. Elite Minchella, you can't imagine anything drastic changing there. And then you go, does a Tom Amon? Is he on the bench? I can't see him going to the starting lineup. I think he's really powerful. I think, to be fair, a player who's done a decent job so far, Gary, is Jordan Desaria. He seems to have come in and he's doing decent business. He's not pulling up trees, but also he's not really letting anyone down.
Taking his chances, isn't he? He's playing really well when he comes on. There's no reason. He's not been giving anybody a reason to have a go at him, is he? Which is really good.
But when you look at all of that, Carl, you go, well, Jack Broadbent's probably the one who's got no place in that side unless he's going to drop a forward. So, you know, Jack Broadbent's gone from being a regular in the first team to being a bit part player to not even being in the squad, which would be tough for him. But ultimately, like you said, Carl, don't forget who we're playing. Take out the derby bit, which, you know, don't really seem to feature against them up now because they're just another side now, really, aren't they? But if Rovers need to take out the fact it's a derby, Rovers, this is a game where really they need to focus on their performance. And don't forget, this is home from home. Like, it's not, you know, they should feel as comfortable playing across in the west side of the city just as much as the home team should. You know, we've had great success there. We've got a great record. I think for me, I couldn't care less what they do. I don't think whatever they do will match us.
No.
But I tell you what, this is about Rovers putting in a performance now. Not because it's the derby, but because we need to put a performance in regardless of who the opposition is.
Yeah, and I keep mentioning it, didn't I, especially earlier on in the podcast, that I think if Rovers get back to the basics, that's what they need to do. And I think if they do that on Thursday night, basics will be enough to beat them, regardless of what personnel, you know, play, starts, comes on, whatever, who plays where. I'm pretty sure if Rovers get the basics right, they'll certainly get the win. So there's options, mate, like we keep saying. And, you know, we're just outside of the playoffs at the moment. And if we wasn't to win on Thursday night, I'd be a lot more concerned then than I am now. Obviously, so I don't see anything but a Rovers win at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, yeah. Let's not contemplate that just yet. And obviously, we'll be confident going into the game as well, Gary, because I've just seen the match officials, and we have got Chris Kendall, who's going to be taking control of the match, who I am sure will not want to make a point of anything that he's doing. He will be in the background. I'm sure he will just let the game flow and not want to get involved in anything to do with the game.
Kendall show. He certainly put his stamp. He certainly stamps his authority, sending players off for back chat, didn't he? You know, I think.
Well, the only thing you would say is to Rovers is you've had him now.
Yeah.
You know what it's up to you now. Like, you can't. That's the thing. But we don't know when a referee wants to go off on a tangent and start penalising players for things that other referees have just let go.
You don't mind referees doing what they do, but they've just got to be. I think every sentence when you mention referee is closely followed by another sentence that mentions the word consistency. You just want referees to be consistent. So if you're going to start doing that, then do it for everybody. Then every single game that weekend. You know, don't let the likes of Jake Connor get away with it. Who just chirps the referee every weekend, doesn't he? You know, if you're gonna punish one team for it or a game, then make sure it goes throughout the whole of the league that weekend. Yes, but it will be the Kendall show, and as long as we know that, we're all okay with it.
Yeah, well, as long as it goes both ways. That's the caveat to that, isn't it? Right? Okay, we've already moaned and groaned long enough, and hopefully
Two of you
put a
have.
little bit of a positive spin on what might come. Don't forget, Hull Kingston Rovers, as the intro says, we are still the world champions, so let's not forget that. Before we finish this week's Robin Pod, though, let's bring on question time. Okay, we have got lots of questions to get through, so let's start with some of these we've probably answered already. Adam Wadford, thank you for your contribution. He says, Lewis has now been sin-binned in a few games this season and was lucky to not be banned before now. Yes, he is a very important player, but he's no longer a young, experienced player, 25 years old, don't forget. Whether something is distracting him off field, we fans only see the on-field actions. His discipline is getting worse, if anything. Do you think we can manage him? That's a big one, isn't it? Like, do you think we can manage him? I think, to be fair, I think we can. It'd be very interesting to see what happens post Willie Peters, Carl, when Nathan Kalis comes in, because obviously, you know, different player. But yeah, I think there's. I tell you what, there's the amount of abuse Mikey Lewis cops is unbelievable. You'd think he was the president of Iraq or someone. You know, like you'd think he'd actually killed someone. Like, you know, he plays rugby league. Yeah, don't get me wrong. His behaviour sometimes isn't great. Would I expect that from a Rovers player? No. But when you put these players and they're playing to such a high tempo, such a fine line, there's going to be times when they get it wrong. And what frustrates me is increasingly from a lot of Rovers supporters, instead of putting their arm around him, they'd rather cast him aside and put him and go, hang on, he's still a phenomenal talent. So why not we try and work with him, bring him in, instead of pushing him out there and going, oh, that's it. No, you need to go. We need to get rid of him. No, he needs to stay here because he's a great player. And yeah, that's me going off on a little bit of a tangent there, Cal. But I just think, you know, I love Mikey Lewis, but I understand what people say about him. I
was going to say, who said they want rid of him?
Well, to be fair, I tell you what, Carl, if you go through a lot of forums and listen to people, a lot of people would say, get rid of him. He's a liability. You need to bring in someone more experienced. We need to and that's. I can't get that. I don't understand that.
No, I think that's a bit extreme. That's probably why I don't read half of the nonsense on them forums. It's it's a bit much in it. I mean, credit him when he's playing well, and you know, pull him up when he's not doing so well. That's the way I'd see him. But I think majority of the opposition fans boo him and give it all the V's and all the online abuse he gets is because he's that good. He's simply that good, and I can guarantee you they'd have him in their side.
Exactly,
and that's why look at the likes of Sam Tompkins in the past and Mickey McAlorum. People used to hate them guys, but could those world-class players? That's why. So a lot of it's just down to jealousy.
Yeah, Gary, Tom Noble, he says, does our team selection, backs on the bench, subs only getting on for a few minutes on the pitch or no time at all, give an unearned advantage to the opposition? If yes, why do we do it? And it's a good point in it. I mean, if you only have to look at Magic Weekend where Noah Booth didn't get on at all. I think Bill Leyland came on, did about
6 minutes. Yeah,
6 minutes. I get that. Like, rugby league's a war of attrition. You know, you need your players to come on and you know, you need the players who'll start the game need backing up. And this is one thing that always surprises me in rugby league is you cannot afford not to use your interchange bench to the full effect.
I mean, players. I was a coach in the past a long time ago, and players want
driver or
coach. No, Kingston Warriors first team anyway. And players want to play, don't they? No matter what sport, you know, you're in it to play. And I've done it in the past where I've done an interchange, and then 5 or 6 minutes have gone by, and I've pulled that interchange player off because they've not been watching the game, or I'm not saying this is what Bill Leyland did, but it just didn't work for whatever reason. And when Willie gets it right, the same as the Mikey Lewis thing, innit? We're all applauding him and saying he's the greatest coach in the world. That's why he's the coach, to make these decisions and take that criticism on the chin when we feel it hasn't worked. But only he knows, doesn't he, why he didn't put Noah Booth on and why he took Leyland off for that farthest, So I don't think it's a disadvantage. I think the coach knows what he's doing, and players want to play. So if a player can do another 5 minutes, so let him do another 5 minutes.
Yeah.
If you only use 7 interchanges, then that's fine. I don't think you have to use all 8 every game.
No, I think it's more so because that's just a norm, isn't it? That's the norm, and when you go against the norm, people always then question it. And to be fair, when you go against the norm and it works, nobody says out. It's when when there's sometimes an indifferent performance or a negative result, that's where the questions come in. Sean Michael, he says, Peter's impending departure has created a degree of uncertainty and instability. This season, the squad doesn't seem to have the same cohesion, unity, or edge. Can that be turned round, or do we need a reality check? Is the grand final simply a step too far? If so, do we start the succession planning now by giving the fringe players and next generation meaningful game time, even if it means accepting the rest of the season is about building for the future, rather than chasing unrealistic silverware?
That's a big question, isn't it? I don't think there is uncertainty because we know another coach is coming in. But there's definitely a lack of stability and fragility there, isn't there? But I don't think there's uncertainty because we know what's happening. But yes, I think we mentioned it in the podcast earlier on, didn't we? His leaving has created ripples.
Yeah, and I think Sean's right because he alludes to the fact about people operating for the greater good. But I would say that Willie Peters, selfishly, he knows he's here till October. He's going to do whatever he can to get silverware. He couldn't care less. No, I want to rephrase that. He could care. But Nathan Kalis is coming to do his job. Willie Peters has got a job to do now to the end of October, and he will do what he thinks he can do. Now, what happens after that? Willie Peters is gone. Yeah. So he has got one eye on winning silverware, and ultimately, Karl, until it's mathematically impossible, Willie Peters will be striving to get silverware whatever way he can. And
don't forget, despite the fact he's a head coach and he's been paid handsomely in rugby league terms, for him as well, it's been an upheaval, hasn't it? I think his wife and children have been over in Papua New Guinea for 6-7 weeks, haven't they? Setting up over there. So for him, it's been a change as well. He's it sounds really soppy, doesn't it? He's had nobody to go back to 6 or 7 weeks when he goes back home and things like that. So for him, there's been a little bit of a change as well. Anyway, that's just me being a soft southerner. Go on.
Yeah, you're funny. And also, you changed your name from Gary to Karl. So you did well there.
Sorry, Karl.
No, don't worry, mate.
But no, I mean, realistically, Karl, silverware's still an opportunity, isn't it? And they're going to chase it down. We've seen sides do it. Let's be honest. We have seen sides in the position that we're in now and in worse positions chase down them grand final places. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility that Hull Kingston Rovers will be in a grand final at the end of the season.
Yeah, exactly. All the time it's mathematically possible. They'll keep going, won't they? They're not a bad club overnight. They're not a bad squad. There's a lot of winners within that squad. So the mentality will stay the same, won't it? Win every game possible. I think there's 8 games remaining, plus we've got the game in hand, haven't we? So 9 in total. So there's still a lot to play for. It's not all doom and gloom, and like you say, all the time it's possible. It'll be literally like a cup run, won't it? An extended cup run. They just need to keep winning, get back on the horse, do the basics right, and all the time it's there, they'll go for it. I'm pretty sure of that.
Hey,
Yeah.
winning it from 6 is just as good as winning it from 3rd.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the playoff system, isn't it?
Yeah.
You'll get a lot of the old guard when they used to say about, whoever finishes first should win the lot, blah blah blah. Well, scrap that, because look what Leeds did from 5th a few years ago.
Yeah.
So you play the rules and you play the system, don't you? And hopefully Rovers can do that.
Well, I'll tell you what, if they do, there's a big debate there whether that's the greater achievement than anything.
I'll tell you what.
So we'll save that. Hopefully, we get the opportunity to have that discussion.
There's no winning it from 12th, is there?
No. Well, 13th.
Oh, don't lower yourself to them, Gary. Come on.
Yeah. Danny Barrett, he says, why does the RFL do nothing about bad and biased referees? And do you think if the NRL do invest in Super League, they should bring some Reds from Australia? I've got no idea. I've got Danny. Yeah, I don't know why they don't do anything about biased. I don't know. Casablanca transfers. He says, this is interesting. We haven't got long left. He says, would appear that we could do with half a dozen fresh faces in 2027, but with hardly anyone off contract next year. What options will Nathan Kalis have to recruit? Well, I don't want to talk too much about next year, but he has got a good point in terms of there's not a lot of room to manoeuvre, is there? Now, I wonder, Carl, if that... Did you hear that, Gary? Carl?
Yeah, that's why I'm keeping quiet.
But I wonder if Rovers have done a bit of business early and sign up people, because there's a bit of insecurity around the TV deal. They don't know the money. They want to get a squad tied down and secured. But at the same point, there's a lot of Rovers fans maybe questioning, maybe keeping players on for a year longer than what they maybe should have been. I'm not one of them. I think that the recruitment but there's not a lot of room, is there? There's not a lot of next year. There's not going to be a huge, as it stands now. There's not a lot of room to manoeuvre for Nathan Kalis.
No, and also, mate, what you got to keep reminding yourself of, rugby league's not like football, not like other sports where they're playing championship manager with the squads. Nathan Kalis is going to have to come in and do exactly what Willie Peters do. He'll inherit a squad of a certain amount of players. Now, that's not to say that you might get the odd one or two leave and he might make the odd one or two signings, but ultimately, Nathan Kalis is coming in. He pretty much knows the root of the squad and the base of the squad, and he'll be given time to work with that, just as Willie was. So yeah, it's not a bad squad to inherit, even if a few do leave, is it? Let's be honest. Yeah.
Craig Broadley, thank you for your question. I'm surmising it. It's about the youth system. We are literally running out of time on the Rowing Pod, so I'll try and answer that next time. James Scruton, he asks about our squad. He says, when you look at our spine, like it should be as good as with nearly full strength. Interestingly, and James won't mention it, but if you look at that lot squad and you look at their numbers, they're not that far away from being close to full strength. Just as a caveat, because I know they'll tell you that they've got a lot of injuries, but actually, when you look at the squad numbers, they've not got that many. When you see the squad, Matt Baxter, I think we've answered that. Jack Charles, Tyrone May, Mikey Lewis, blah, blah, blah. Thank you for that. And we'll finish on this one, Gary. We'll finish on this one. What is your favourite derby moment?
Stanley Jean scoring at the KC as it was back then. It was either just under the post, so just to the left of the posts as I was stood in the crowd. Outside, I remember it. It was absolutely brilliant. So that's my favourite.
Yeah, go on, Carl. I'll throw it over to you.
The Dave Hodgson, commentated on by Chadders.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's not my necessarily favourite, but it's in recent memory, and it's one that I like to remind them, is when we played them quite recently in the Challenge Cup quarter-final, and they genuinely thought they had a chance of beating us. They had Will Price, and they thought that the ticket sales went through the roof. They had a big crowd, and they genuinely thought that they could beat us. And you know what Rovers went and did? beat them with ease.
Is that the one where Batch scored? Sidestepped about 3 players.
Exactly.
To his left?
Yeah. It became a non-event in the end. So that's one of my most recent favourite memories. But I mean, to be fair, you could go for Jimmy Kynhorst, that last-minute try. Dave Hodgson try. You could go all the way back, couldn't you? There's so many great memories. I doubt the game on Thursday is going to live up to any high drama, and I think that's because the Robins will thoroughly beat them, because I just can't see how that lot can muster any fighting them. So I'll die by my sword on that one. But look, it's going to be hopefully another easy game for the Robins in terms of getting them 2 points. We do need to get back on putting a run of results together. And I think, like you said, Gary, we hoped it started against Warrington. Hopefully it starts on Thursday night against that lot from across the river. Karl, Gary, a huge thank you for your contribution on this week's Robin Pod. We have overrun massively, but that's because there is just so much to talk about right now about Hull Kingston Rovers. A huge thank you to everybody who's tuned in, whether you're listening on podcast or watching on YouTube. A huge thanks to Budget Ties Auto Centre, who, of course, are the favourites of the club officials, supporters and players of Hull Kingston Rovers. But for now, live, love, laugh and be happy.
Throughout the years, whatever the game, the Red Army's passion is always the same. Decades pass, now we rise anew. Rovers fans, this pod is for you. We won the cup, we ruled the league. A grand final win made us all believe. The world took note with Brisbane's fall. The Robins superb, now we won. Champions of the world.